some people, but generally those are the floating nebulous spots that we do see from the deck. But interesting in this one, of course, I think this has become one of the staple matchups of Grandmasters this season, I would say, is Garrote Rogue versus various variations of Handlock on the other side. I did really like Lorinda's comment the other night on Americas, where he said whenever you see one deck or the other win in this matchup, you feel like it should go that way all the time, because when the Warlock wins, they just get huge threats down. There's not a single card in the Rogue's deck that's able to deal with it. They just smack him in the face and the game ends. When the Rogue wins the game, they just draw their deck and kill them before the Warlock's ever able to do that. And you're just like, well, this looks free, like regardless of which side ends up winning the matchup. But both of those things seem to happen a fairly equal amount of the time, which is what makes the matchup so interesting.
Well, already getting into it. Casie, of course, getting that quest active, I imagine. Yep, gonna go for that live tap. But Gaby has a ton of card draw available. Going to start off with the prep into Shroud, obviously the combination of making Shroud cheaper, then having the flexible choices of whether the minions off the top he wants to play them, or whether he wants to follow up with that Swindle, and with obviously unplayable minions that turn, goes with the Swindle, keeps that card draw cooking, and has a pretty solid way to continue this game, even if it is just Kazakus.
Too quiet.
Yeah, I think this play is something that we've seen more and more as Rogue technology has developed. We've seen players very, very happy to go for this early field contact, little bit of draw, and then just step it back into your hand ready for later, especially in matchups where there's no possible way that can be disrupted. Talking about Demon Hunter with Glide, for example. But even now, a few, Vol'jin and Mutinous decks popping up on the other side as well that can sometimes mess with that. But against the vast majority of decks, Shadow Step field contact is a lot of value in most situations.
We're just working out how he wants to follow this up, whether he wants to play anything else, basically swap a Plunderer, for example, for a different card in his deck, if he wants to play that out to kill this Tour Guide. But I do agree, I think no matter what happens, this is getting Shadow Stepped, especially because he didn't find the second one in the first place.
Yeah, it's a little bit awkward in terms of the overall one-mana options, because you can certainly create very compelling arguments for holding on to all three of these cards, which is what he ends up doing completely. Obviously, Ethereal Org Merchant is a key part of the OTK. Prize Plunderer is the best clearing tool you have in your deck, probably the best way to kill, say, an Anetheron exactly. Flesh Giants, generally, you're not too worried about actually killing, because by that stage of the game, you're just trying to kill your opponent. But on that note, Brain Freeze, I think, is low-key one of the best cards in the deck, because sometimes when your opponent goes for the big setup turn that the Warlock generally has, Flesh Giant, Scavenger, Cult Neophyte, something like that, to try and stop you from comboing and kill you the next turn, you can just use your 2 Brain Freezes to freeze the 2 biggest minions on the board and just say, okay, end turn. You're not going to kill me from this position, and then I'll kill you next turn when I have my unlocked mana from the Cult Neophyte. So I do think Brain Freeze is a very, very valuable card overall. And as that lengthy explanation hopefully elucidated for you people, Gaby chose to hold on to all of those cards and just float 1 mana at the end of his turn.
And although this looks like the field contact has just been sacrificed to the gods here and just left on board, not even with a Divine Shield, Casie does have to, utilize a lot of mana clearing this up. I doubt he's going to aim a Netheron at the field contact, so it's likely he has to spend the mana on spells. And with the Neophyte backup from Gaby, he has to at least make Casie have a slow turn for this, right? And obviously, as we can see now, not clear off the whole board.
Yeah, good news for Gaby. Still a good chunk of power in play here, which means he can clear up most of the big threats on board. No real worry about lethal on the following turn, just based on what he can see. Those are basically the 3 best options on this current board state, I would say. Draw a card is just generic good option in this version of the deck. +1/+1 with 3 minions in play, fantastic. Deal 3 also offers some really nice breakpoints overall on the board, I would say.
Yeah, but it's just interesting to see what he went for, because I was even looking at the fact that he could have actually Shadow Stepped it, right? Even with the mana reduction, or increase, should I say, from the Neophyte. Poisonous deal 3, okay.
Deal 3. All right, fair enough.
That'll do it.
No Rend. Means right now he's going to have to go about it the old-fashioned way or go digging with the backfire for that Soul Rend. Over 50% of the way through the deck now, does find it on the last option.
Does he need to use it, though?
Perhaps not anymore, no.
Double Coil and Drained Soul. As long as he kills off, what, the Neophyte and the Golem, he's probably feeling pretty okay about the turn.
All right. See that?
Golem has to die, of course, because there's a chance that if it lives, in case he wants to play a big minion, then Shadow Step causes some great issues there. Neophyte for similar-ish reasons.
Ooh, no Neophyte coming down this turn then by the looks. Looks like Casey's going to look for the life tap instead. Not sure if he's down to 0 mana Giants at this point. He's going to go Gold Null instead. Okay, nice pickup. If the Null hadn't have been found, I think that turn would have ended with Tour Guide tap instead in most situations. Or Tour Guide hold, possibly, depending on hand size considerations as well.
And now I imagine Gaby is going to go fishing once again with the Shroud. A little bit unfortunate for him, he doesn't have another prep to pair with it, so he can just give himself more mana this turn. Orden and Octo.
Efficient is sufficient.
Looks like a hand worth Octobot to me, Subtle.
Yeah, certainly does. Just about any hand at this stage of the game would be, and Gaby has been Octoless throughout the game so far.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Having said that, it's certainly not the premium discount hand. In terms of the actual kill combo cards, okay, actually two Ethereals isn't all that bad, but it's only one of the two Garots, and there's no second field contact in the hand currently, right? So there is still a couple of other cards that he would quite like to discount, and even in this situation, the other Octobot is actually a really nice card to discount with the first one as well, to be able to combo all of that together.
Yeah, the good thing here, at least for this one turn from Gaby, is that Casie is very killable, right? At 18 health, and he has triple spell damage if he really wants it from the Ethereal, which means he can probably use the Shadow Step in a different way. But the lack of card draw is a problem. He really go crazy here and like set everything up and then secret passage into a contact to try and draw the last card or something. It's probably a bit extreme.
So many.
It does seem somewhat ambitious. You've got to look sometimes in situations like this, what are my chances of playing a secret passage and then playing another card that allows me to keep a field contact, right? Answer to that question with that remaining deck, 0. He doesn't get to go secret passage into like Swindle and then have a guaranteed field contact, but it does look like if this is the plan, Gaby is going to try and make something happen this turn.
He gets a certain level of backup as well, right? Because he has Brain Freeze. I mean, if he's going in with these Garotes, then we'll just have to see. Yep, that's one.
He looks very pleased. Forced himself here to Brain Freeze the Taunt minion and not the 8/8 because that means that the actual minions get to go face here. He needs one more bleed. Can he actually get through all of these animations?
He misses, right? Because, because the passage is 2 mana anyway.
Yep, too expensive. Means these now go back into the deck. He pushes the extra damage face.
It's 11. Casie. Oh, there you go. I was going to say, I couldn't see the Battle Master. I was like, where is it? It was a good effort from Gaby. But Casie got there in the end. Not quite stretching out the lethal there from Gaby. It was a good attempt, and like I said at the start of the turn, there is a chance he could have got there, but they would have had to been pretty specific outcomes, and he didn't quite have a deck small enough to really guarantee that.
Yeah, so he needed exactly 2 bleeds off the first secret passage, right? Because they were going to cost him 2 each through the Cult Neophyte. He had 4 mana remaining after the secret passage, so he wouldn't really have had time to do anything else. And as I was talking about, as he decided to make that play, he didn't have any other card draw remaining in his deck apart from the other secret passage, so there wasn't even an option to like Foxy Swindle from that.
Yeah, do something
into bleeds, right, and then get out of it. He just straight up needed 2 of them off the secret passage. I'd like to go back and look at the turn because the dynamic I was talking about way back at the start with the Brain Freezes was available. He could, for example, have done something with brain freezing the giant just to freeze it. Don't worry too much about killing it. And then just with playing 2 or 3 cards, prize plundered the 6/6 plus traded his board into it to take enough damage off board, I think, to then not be dead to Battlemaster on the other side, which maybe could have bought him one more turn. But I suspect if Gaby didn't go for it, the problem with that was to get the prize plunderer high enough, he would have had to have used too many cards from his existing hand already to then have a combo kill set up for the following turn. So he chose to go for the out there with the secret passage. He looked happy for quite some time during that turn, but in the end was not able to get there.
Yeah, a little bit of a rough one there for Gaby. Casie is going to be queuing his Rogue, and Gaby also sticking to Rogue, so we are going to get a mirror for game number 2. And again, just looking at this, there you go. If you can remember that, or just rewind the video, because you can do that. Check out Casey's list, because his list is not running the Foxy Fraud, right? He is running instead 2 One Thieves in there.
Right.
Let's kick it off.
Yeah. 2 One Thieves, 2 Brain Freezes, 1 Penflinger, and no Foxy Fraud in the case for Casie.
Cool, both players, okay. Field contact each, Shroud each. The prep, obviously not there for Casie, as Gaby locks in the prep Shroud nice and early.
Yeah, prep Shroud is really sick. I've seen actually some players even keeping prep in the mirror just because prep Shroud is by far the most powerful thing that you can do on turn 1, and even, you know, prep Swindle even is not too bad. So I think having access to all of this card draw early is pretty big. He will, of course, be wanting an Octobot as soon as possible because this is such a tempo-focused matchup that Octobot is just kind of king even over everything else. It doesn't really matter how high your resource count is if you can't get it exploding onto board as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and this is one of the big learning points when you play this deck, right? Is when you run into the mirror, you don't both ignore each other and draw cards for the combo. It's actually board focused, at least in the early and mid game, and then of course the combo normally used to finish someone off if needed. But in general, yeah, it is all about that board. And now Gaby looks like he's going to try and do something here about this Octobot.
He's looking for a prize plunderer, Raven. Shadow Step, Guardian Orc Merchant, play it down. Secret passage, and I'm gauging from his reaction that he's already seen it and he did not hit it. Still has another shot with the One Thief though. Devolving missiles? Nope.
Good effort. And those, that might have looked a very extreme response, but those are the type of plays you will go for, right? To just completely delete an Octobot from the game. It's that much of a big deal.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was talking about earlier, right? Like, resources be damned. That was exactly the kind of philosophy that I was referring to, where he threw away a ton of resources there just to be able to deny the tempo from his opponent with the Octobot. Didn't manage it in the end, and that's going to give a huge edge over here to Casie, as you see the slippery slope of punishes here from Casie, as not only does the Octobot get to proc once, he gets to step it back to hand again, and he gets to basically draw his deck next turn.
Efficient is sufficient.
Gaby throws out a Octobot of his own. It's extremely vulnerable just to +1/+1 Golem at this point, just straight up. But I think Gaby recognizing quite rightly that he's in the position where he needs to take risks at this point. He can't just play around everything because he's already behind. If you continue to play around everything when you're behind, you're going to get in trouble. But now with spell damage coming down, even a Brain Freeze off the top at this point is going to be able to basically lock this one up for Casie at this point.
Yeah, and you can see this, right? Like, we talked about the combo. Casey's just used spell damage, but most importantly, Casey's just dominating on board. Like, regardless of what's happening, look at this board. Like, Gaby has to do a lot of work to fight back. It's not undoable, but it's definitely tough at this point. 7 minions on board. There's a prize plunder a little bit too late for Gaby.
Did Gaby just literally do the hold up, we've got a badass over here thing?
I imagine the target of this plunderer is likely to be the Octobot at some point here. Minion carrying the spell damage. Casie already, as you can see in the hand, not quite available yet without the help of a prep, but he does have that Mask of Cthulhu, which has other uses in other matchups, but in this, it's often close to a board clear if you're falling behind.
Care to make a wager, friend?
Go for the max card draw here. Foxy.
Yeah, Foxy putting him some work.
Okay. I have to save the step. I might think about saving the step for the ethereal, or just use it now for an ethereal, depending on what he thinks about board tempo.
Yeah, really interesting actually, because he already has one discounted field contact in hand, only 6 cards remaining.
Yeah.
The big question is how much mana he needs to actually get this done. I believe there's one Octobot remaining, right? Yes, which there is. The Garots are in hand, so they will be able to pick up the Octobot discount. One of them's already discounted once, and he does also have a prep remaining. So yeah, I think in the end, what he does need is spell damage and not mana, right? I think he is okay for mana, so this is the right decision.
And also, if he was going to Shadow Step the other one on board, all that does is lose him a minion on board, because it's the same. It'll end up being the same, right? Casie now having his fun. Now the big question here is, Sol, is it lethal? I doubt it.
No.
Can't
Needs
proc.
bare minimum 1 more mana, yeah.
Hey, loser! Give me that! Not what I want!
Too soon.
I mean, Shroud is now out of the way for Gaby, Druid naturally. 7 mana, field contact 2. He would at least have to spend 1 more card before he could even Octo, so likely to be the Cult Neophyte.
That's the 2 cards remaining in Casey's deck at this point. So you can see he's kind of fully committed at this point with his card draw effects to cash out on tempo, as is generally the way in this matchup. So Gaby, I think, will take the risk, I suppose, that he has 1 more turn in this position, because I don't think there's any realistic way he's going to get there with the Shadow Step.
I think he goes now, right? If he got Octo and the proc.
That's an upgrade! Probably.
With what?
Initiating overdrive.
Okay, maybe I'm overthinking this.
He doesn't have enough to get there with 1 mana remaining from this point, right?
No, yeah, not from now, of course. No. I'll just go for the double Neophyte and hope for the best here.
I'm almost out of cards.
There's what, 2, 4, 5, 6, 9 power, 8 now. Able to go face if Casie really wants it. Of course, he does have to make some space. With the double Neophyte unlikely for Casie, so he's just responding in the same fashion, right? It's like, okay, you double Neophyted me effectively. I'm going to do it to you now, and hopefully I won't die.
Yeah, which means these 2 Garots now cost 2 and 3 respectively, which means that is a 6 mana play with the remainder of the deck. That prep is basically free, achieves absolutely nothing.
Plays the card, Sol, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yep. The last 2 cards for Gaby are now Secret Passage and Wand Thief, I believe. Problem is similar to where he was at the end of the last game, whereas if he ends up in the position where he has to use the Secret Passage to draw the cards, the bleeds are just way too expensive to actually cast manually at this point. So he needs to draw into them through Battle Cries if he's going to end up doing that.
Right. Maybe looking for a Lifesteal Rush or some kind of removal tool, I guess, from this Golem if Gaby's decided there's nothing he can get done otherwise. Taunt, deal 3 twice, I think that was.
Yeah, looks good. So yeah, let's say he went Field Contact, Spell Damage, Garot, right? He would be dealing 6 total, straight up with the Garots. So there would be 15 health and 3 damage each. So he would need 5 to be drawn, which does seem extremely unlikely at this point, right?
It would be less, right? Because he couldn't draw in that instance.
I'm out of cards.
Well, he would be, so that's what I'm saying. He would be drawing 1 card off Field Contact and Spell Damage in the first place. If that card is one thief, he then gets to draw again because he drew one thief. If he draws Secret Passage, that's too expensive because the Secret Passage costs 3 and he would only have 2 mana remaining at that point. So even if he hit the 50-50 of drawing his cards in the right order, he would then have to draw 5 out of 6 bleeds before he hit the Secret Passage to get lethal that turn, which is super unlikely.
That's an upgrade. Probably.
Casie going to lock in these Garrotes and rely on Secret Passage now, I guess. This is a very weird endgame state because
it is.
You'd imagine if just glancing at the previous turn that, oh, well, Casey's got nothing in his deck, surely he just wins. But there's no way for him to draw cards.
Nope.
Or at least naturally draw cards, of course. Secret Passage counter draws cards.
Yeah, he's just kind of meandering towards the finish line at the moment. He does still have that Secret Passage available, but it's not going to matter at this point. Next turn, he has no cards remaining. That's just straight up 6 bleeds, and the remainder of his deck is going to come out for 12 damage. And then he'll be able to use the Mask to finish things off if need be. Whereas Gaby, having lost the spell damage on the previous turn, which is not a decision that we really got to talk a great deal about, he now doesn't have a straight-up win condition himself with his own existing bleeds, even alongside the field contact.
Yeah, no burn to go along with that either. Tempo contact.
Such a weird game.
It is, isn't it? And the problem is, Gaby's last card is that Secret Passage, right?
Yes.
Which achieves not nothing because he can like Garrote Passage and play what he draws, but still not quite achieves what he really wanted to. So he may as well play the contact at this point, right? There's no real downside. He has no way in the deck to activate the contact effect with a Battlecry minion or a combo card, so yeah, it's a 3-2 right now.
Yeah, I think what he's trying to work out is weird worlds, right? Because here are the 2 things you have to calculate at this point. Ignore the Mask. It's not there. Gaby doesn't know about it. He's not calculating for it, right? He's calculating for everything else. So if at this point he survives these 6 bleeds being drawn, right? He knows that. They deal 12 damage, there's 1 damage from the dagger. So what he's calculating is the difference between a field contact being on board and attacking face next turn, plus Garrotes going into the deck, plus Secret Passage, plus the bleeds being played, plus fatigue. Those breakpoints of 1 fatigue plus 2 fatigue and so on, versus just putting the bleeds in the deck that turn, and then doing the same thing a turn quicker, but not having a field contact attacking face on the previous turn. And which of those, if either, get there quicker with 1 tick of fatigue, 2 ticks of fatigue, 3 ticks of fatigue, whatever it takes on the other side. As it stands, like I said, first thing I said, ignore the Mask, because he wasn't beating that in any world. He may have also been calculating like maybe Fireball or something on the other side, and whether that had any kind of impact, Ruined Orb, if that had any kind of impact. But a Mask, no play he had on that last turn that was going to give him any shot against that.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a weird ending to the Rogue Mirror. One you don't often see is like both players effectively using up all the big combo potential resources in just defending against the other player's aggression. And with the help of Mask of Cthulhu, though, Casie made the ending of that game, although not very spectacular, at least quite easy for him there, without having to do too many crazy mental gymnastics like Gaby was trying to do. Doesn't mean we are moving on into game number 3, and if Casie can take this, he'll be feeling fantastic, not only getting that playoff spot, but also just having a 3-0 sweep against Gaby in his last match of the season.
Yeah, it will be a phenomenal turnaround for sure. And I think also a little bit of Casey's mind, even if he might not necessarily admit it, will have enjoyed asserting a bit of rogue dominance there as well, right? Because, you know, when you're Casie, you want to win rogue games because you do have that reputation as a rogue player, particularly when the young upstart comes at you, right? You want to be able to prove you can win those mirror matches, which are generally considered one of the most technical and intricate matchups in the game, you know, up there with the Demon Hunter mirrors, and even this matchup as well, which I think is super complex. Again, I go back to the man god himself, Alan C86, as he is now known. Hearthstone, but he will always be Alan Numbers to me, who executed one of the best games I've seen in Grandmasters for a long, long time of Rogue playing against Demon Hunter in a very, very specific fashion that really, I think, kind of introduced us to the idea of, yeah, you can actually play around Glide. It can be done.
Right.
It's just very, very difficult.
It's not a straightforward, this is what the card does every single game, no matter what kind of approach, right? Which is, I'm sure, what some people think. Already, though, Casie getting off to a pretty solid start, discovering the Spectral Sight, and still having one locked in the outcast position on the far left. No way, though, for Gaby to proc this Octo quite yet.
Muzzle their magic.
No, just hanging around. He is building a board, and he does have to be a tiny bit worried because ways to kill this Octobot do start to become introduced to the game as time goes on, right? Like, 4 damage in one go starts to become easier once 4 mana or so becomes available, right? Like, we talk about the satisfaction of Arcanist Fel Barrage, for example. That'll clear an Octobot in one punch if there's a significantly low number of minions on board.
And especially now when there's an Aldraki Warblades equipped, right? There's just so many more options. Gaby going for a tempo approach with this Golem. Not too much of a surprise here. Taunt, draw 2, okay. Well, more of a tempo approach in the fact it's a 5-5, not a tempo approach in the form of anything else.
There it is. Arcanist Fel Barrage will hit the 2 lowest health minions, 3-3 first, then the 1-4, both for 4 damage. No discounts for you on this occasion, I am afraid, Gaby.
2 lowest health enemies, but yeah, I agree.
Did I say minions?
You did.
That's an excellent and entirely valid correction, Raven. Well done.
Also difficult because what you said wasn't technically wrong. It hit the 2 lowest health minions on the board. So, enemy minions, but yes.
Yes, but unlike you, I won't try and weasel out of my mistakes. I'd, well, just hold the L and move on. It's a luxury you have when you make as few mistakes as I do.
Yeah, and also way less fun. See? Though Golem going to be dealt with, no real problem for Casie. Again, I think Casey's probably more annoyed at the Golem drawing Gaby 2 cards than he is at it being a 5-5 with this deck.
Yeah.
This Demon Hunter does excel at dispatching minions left, right, and center.
Yeah, with a Fell Screen Blast, you point it and it hits left, right, and center. Yeah.
Exactly. Where's the dreaded potion, though, in Gaby's hand? Is that what you said? Did you say anyone who picks potion never plays it or it never wins a game? Is that something you've said before? I feel like it is.
No, I don't think so.
I'm sure you always talk about being
like
baited by potion.
Oh, I used to talk about getting baited by potion all the time, yeah. But I think it's like, no one has ever spent mana on Vendetta and won a game of Hearthstone. That was definitely one of them in terms of the really, really definitive statements. But I don't think I've applied the same to potion ever. I might be wrong.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
Muzzle their magic.
Bit of a weird looking turn here from Gaby. His mouse movements or anything to go by. Brain freeze. I was wondering how he aimed a brain freeze at something that turn, and well, that's how. Of course, cards from Secret Passage means he just basically empties his deck at that point, which is the main goal. Yeah. Of course, gets the double benefit of not only emptying the cards he played, but playing it with a field contact to keep drawing more. So, good turn there, but you're going to have to start putting something together. With that one Octobot down without getting a reduction, you do feel it, don't you? Even just looking at this hand right now.
Yeah, for sure. But again, I think I'm feeling the burn with Casey's version of the deck as well. Like, that was a frustrating turn. You know, yes, it was Cult Neophyte against Demon Hunter, which tends to be very disruptive, but it was 4 out of 5 on a quest proc for card draw, and then he had to just throw out a 3-mana Fel Barrage just to be able to clear out a must-kill target on the other side of the board. Like, it wasn't exactly like Casey's having a great time of it over the other side either.
I'm definitely paying a lot of attention to this Demon Hunter whenever we see it on screen, because for me, it hurts me so much to not have Il'gynoth as an option. It just interests me greatly to see how the good players approach it.
Right.
Because even now, if I was Casie, I'd be like, wait, I'm just dead next turn. I didn't even do anything this game. But Casie has been doing things. It's just, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel with this deck sometimes.
I mean, that is my experience with Fel Demon Hunter up against Garrote Rogue, though. You feel like you do nothing and then you die. And I do think that's where the addition of Glide actually finds a pretty good niche for this version of the deck, just the addition of that Glide being able to disrupt. But Casie just hasn't been able to do that because he's just had Jace blocker. He's had Jace blocker the entire game, Magtheridon blocker the entire game. He just really hasn't had the options to be able to do that kind of stuff.
And Gaby just deleted almost all of the rest of his deck that turn. Very, very close indeed. 0 mana Octo in hand, 1 mana Field Contact, which will no doubt be 0 very soon. There's some big draw capability here. He's just missing the second Garrote at this point.
Yep.
This is the kind of hand you want to glide. As
yeah, it
mentioned,
is.
A little bit stuck at the wrong point here. Can Casie... Or he can't even draw, can he, into it? He's got nothing that would actually get him there.
No.
Make a difference. Or make it be playable, at least.
Activates the acrobatics, gets another glide stuck middle of the hand, but I think also most importantly did not pick up additional fell damage there. Was probably looking for the other Fury, I would imagine, chief amongst everything, so at least he would then have a lethal setup for the following turn, maybe with the Jace if he could get a bunch of extra damage through, but as it stands I don't think any of that is going to matter at this point. I think this is just a very clean lethal for Gaby to leverage himself back into this series.
It does look like it, doesn't it? Whenever someone like Gaby is hovering a card before the turn has even started, you know they're pretty good. They've generally got a pretty good plan about how this is going to go. The Garrotes go in for 4.
Yeah,
and
what,
Swindle.
2 mana to spare at the end of the turn?
Yeah, Swindle, Prize Plunderer, whatever needs to be played for Gaby as long as he can draw a card this turn.
And somewhere in Romania, a huge sigh of relief is heard in between a certain salty Battlegrounds player pounding his desk as he gets top 8, because RDU is still in with a chance for as long as Gaby stays in this series. Remember, that's the stakes in this one. Gaby is looking to earn a playoff spot for RDU at this point, and Casie, with a victory, would overtake RDU, kick RDU out of playoffs, and take that playoff spot for himself. Gaby has already secured #1 seed in the standings overall, but a win here would mean there is no doubt, there is no question, there is no asterisk that Gaby has had the best GM season of all time at this point.
And moving on now, as we do see just a quick summary of that matchup, it looks like Gaby is going to be jumping over to his Druid, and right at the beginning of the series, we did see that Gaby was, what was it, 9-1, 10-1 with the Druid so far.
10-1. Yep.
10-1, sorry, yeah, with the Anaconda Druid. This list you see in front of you right now, but again, like how, like. I'm struggling to just remove the Demon Hunter bias out of my brain of what I think of the deck, but how does Druid generally fare in this one? Because it looks like it can not only put on some pressure, which can be answered by the Demon Hunter, but the Celestial plus Anaconda turn, or combo of turns, just seems too strong.
I would agree with that, yeah. I think Celestial is a bigger punish, weirdly, against this version of the deck. I mean, it swings and roundabouts, I suppose. In terms of disrupting what Fel Demon Hunter can do, Celestial Alignment is better against this version of the deck than the other deck with Skull, because the other deck with Skull can play Skull, and from that point, they can kill you with 1 mana, 2 mana, whatever it takes, right? If they hit a couple of good discounts, they can Jace Il'gynoth same turn with a Moarg. Fel spells start flying everywhere, you're dead, right? It can just happen. But because this version of the deck is essentially replacing Skull with Glide, you actually have a disruption tool back the other way to the alignment deck, because Glide will remove all enchantments from cards that are shuffled into the deck, so you can take a handful of 1 mana cards and shuffle them back into the deck at full cost for the Druid on the other side. So you do have a little bit of counterplay in that regard. But kind of to answer your question directly, do they have any counterplay to the alignment plus Anaconda hand? No, not really. If that happens, they're probably in trouble.
Well, there's an alignment.
Look at that.
And there's Anaconda. And there's a Bloom. I'm going to start naming other cards in the hand.
Germination.
There we go.
Solar Eclipse.
Coin.
These are actually very, I mean, the two I mentioned are actually super relevant for when it comes to it, right? But, okay, well, I mean, that's it. That is now just the hand. Next turn, I will imagine he will Bloom Coin as Celestial, and then at that point, it's just cross your fingers, no glide. That's it. That's the game at that point, because if he survives from that point to have one more turn after the Overload wears off, then he will find himself winning the game pretty much immediately, I would say.
Gaby's just like,
And now, with that glide second from the right, if Gaby does jam it this turn, there is no feasible way where that glide will be outcastable next turn because Casie will have 1 mana.
And again, not exactly, this deck isn't exactly at the top of my amount of games played, but I don't really see a reason not to. Everything's there, right? Everything Gaby needs is there. I guess the reason is the overload turn, but that just surely doesn't really make enough of a reason, should I say.
Oh, really?
What is this?
He just goes Anacondra, forgets about the Celestial Alignment altogether, and is just going to try and pop off with the Germination. I actually confess I did not look at this at all, but this makes a lot of sense, because now he's suddenly only a magic 1 mana away from being able to get Cenarion Ward down anyway, and he's already popping off with the Arbor Ups. What's that draw? It needs to be big, it needs to be Immolation Aura. It is not any of those things. That is 3 damage per to the Anacondras. Not good enough.
Yeah, if Casie could kill the Anacondras this turn, he does effectively gain an extra turn, right? Because of the overload that Gaby will have, or at least close to an extra turn.
Yes. Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
Gaby kind of nods. I think he was okay with this situation. Nothing doing here, though. Bell Barrage not really going to achieve anything. We'll take a little bit of damage off the right-hand side of the board with the trees. Oh! Go, 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 go! Steering time.
More mana! Oh, that'll be it, right?
That?
Solo.
Yeah, 19 plus 8 twice. Yep, that seems like a lot of damage to me.
And the wins just keep on coming with this Anacondra deck for Gaby. That makes it 11-1, I believe, at this point. And he is going to even up the series and take it all the way to game number 5, continuing to give Mr. RDU some hope at playoffs this season. Casie's got one more game to play if he wants to make the ultimate recovery this season and actually still make it into playoffs. And just quickly triple checking here, it is of course going to be Demon Hunter from Casie versus Warlock from Gaby. Quite straightforward for me, the two weakest decks in each player's lineup. I think that's fair to say.
I would agree with that overall, yes. I do think, again, it's a different dynamic of Demon Hunter, right, than we're necessarily used to talking about. I think the Fel Demon Hunter versus Handlock matchup has always been a little bit different, but again, it's that addition of Glide into Fel Demon Hunter, which is not necessarily in the normal case. The addition of the quest into Fel Demon Hunter, which changes things a little bit as well, just because of those extra discounts that you can get along the way. So I think this is a very, very fitting matchup to end things on, because, you know, not only would I look at this Handlock and say it is the weak deck in Gaby's lineup this week, potentially, it also statistically is the weak deck for Gaby in Grandmasters, as we were kind of just poking fun of a little bit yesterday when we're just desperate for just something non-glowing to be able to say about Gaby for once. So we, Lorinda dug through the statistics, found a negative, made an enemy for life based on Gaby's Twitter after doing that. But Warlock has been the weak link. It's a negative win rate deck for Gaby in Grandmasters so far. So I think this is a very fitting way to round this one out.
Yeah, let's see how it goes, though. Gaby does have access to that early backfire, which, again, for me, feels more needed than ever. It was already very good in Warlock, but after the nerfs, you just need the card draw. You need the self-damage to be able to help accelerate that quest. But Casie, does have Magtheridon blocking the glide, but that's not the end of the world. Magtheridon in this matchup is very playable. Not really too much thinking about, as opposed to some of the other matchups such as Mage and Rogue you have to consider.
All right, decision time for Gaby already. Yep, you see the shake of the head, the wry smile. He jams the backfire. He could have just played a 3-3 on curve there, right, and said, nah, I'm not playing this glide game with you. I'm just going to put some pressure on, start hitting you with a minion. But in the end, he's just going to cross the fingers, hope it's not there. Illidari Studies comes down. Doesn't get the job done. Double Magtheridon, though. Yeah. All right. Spicy business.
When you thought a 12-12 was good, what about a 13-13? Now, what is the follow-up here? He can tap Null. This Neophyte is very likely to change his plan. This now also means that Glide can't be played this turn.
Yep, Neophyte very solid here. It also impacts, I suppose, a little bit what the potential clears would be on the Hellfire Warders, right? Which is a very big deal.
Yep.
I think one of the dynamics that perhaps hasn't been mentioned enough about Magtheridon hitting the metagame is one of the reasons why Casie was so eager to throw it down as early as possible against Warlock. Those minions died on Warlock's side of the board now, and that's very, very important for disrupting the raised dead pool for Gaby at this point, and meaning that he cannot just guarantee Neophytes, guarantee Gnolls, guarantee Giants, whatever it ends up being that he's looking for.
I do like the option here, though, of just double Null Neophyte. Looks like Gaby's going to actually go for tap, move the quest forward, get more cards in hand. I just wondered with the disruption he gave in the previous turn or so, whether it was worth dumping as much power onto the board and say, well, if you want to glide me, you will get smacked. Which is still kind of what he's done anyway. Just managed to squeeze a tap in instead.
Outcast Glide now for Gaby.
For 13 damage, if he gets Battleground Battlemaster, it's gonna look dicey. Did he get it?
Oh!
He got it! He put enough power on the board. Gaby gonna get the victory here, get the point, and he will hold the title of most points earned, best season of Grandmasters ever. As Gaby's dancing around, loving life, and why not, if that's going to be the way you choose to end the series and end that game. What a weird ending, Soto, but you know what? I'm happy with it just because of how giddy Gaby got.
We need, at this point, a replacement, it has to be said, for, you know, many holes that the likes of Tice leave in Grandmasters with their relegation. But I think one particular hole that can be filled right now, Raven, that I'll shoot for, imagine being Gaby.
Things just go right, and I hate it. No, I'm joking. It was a really good pickup there, of course. The Battleground Battlemaster was the one card, I believe, that was the true weakness of Casey's play, but he had to do something. Gaby's hand was huge. He was winning on board. Casie didn't really have much response on that turn. I don't begrudge Casie going for the glide at all, but of course, that one punish was there. It happened. Gaby makes his way to the final and has to take on Fel Kane next.
Yeah, and again, we can wrap it up, put a bow on it. I think if you've got a little bit of lip-reading skill under your belt, you probably saw Gaby throw out towards the camera there, that was for you, RDU, or something like that, because essentially he was the surrogate RDU in this position. Casie and RDU had one playoff spot to fight for. Casie now means that he just misses out on tiebreakers to RDU, who takes that final playoff spot. It's playoff with a deft loss. It's disadvantage seeding in playoffs, but any playoffs is better than no playoffs at this point. But for Gaby, you can see how much that meant to him. You know, not only he did shout out RDU and said, don't worry, I got you, buddy. They were going back and forth on Twitter. He was saying, don't worry, I got this for you. But again, I do think he cares about being the best, right? And now that is definitive. 23 points is more points than anyone has ever got in a Grandmasters season.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge there from Gaby, honestly, and just a great season. Also, just a final shout out again for Casie, someone who looked extremely likely to be facing down that relegation, to be one of those 4 relegated players.